The first sentence can be the hardest. Not any longer. Welcome to Jenn's writing world. If you have a story to tell, you are in the right place. Let's do it 10 minutes at a time. You've probably read that the first sentence is the make it or break it sentence, the sentence that will determine if the reader keeps going in your book. Well, relax. You're a reader, aren't you? Have you ever read the first sentence of a book and said, nope, not going to do this anymore? We don't do that. We read on. We read the first paragraph. We might read the first page. Me, I usually, especially if I got the book from the library or something, read a chapter or two before I decide how horrible it is. However, that does not mean that first sentences aren't important. They just maybe aren't the nerve-wracking event that people make them out to be. So yes, first sentences matter. Mostly to agents and editors who do have to decide things based on just the first sentence, because their slush piles are very large. But even so, I'm going to help you make your first sentence the best it can be with as little stress as possible. Here's tip number 1. Don't agonize about the first sentence until you have finished the book. Making the first sentence perfect is a job for the rewrite, not the first time through. The worst thing that can happen is for you to get stuck making your first sentence perfect and then you never write the second, third, or fourth, or the rest of the sentences. Because more than likely, that first sentence you write isn't going to make it to the final version of your book. Because as the story goes on, you will find out you needed to start in a different spot, or when you get to the end, it will give you new ideas of what the first line can be, and you'll change it anyway. So, ignore the first line until the book is done. The first line that everybody loves to mention is "Call me Ishmael." And "Call me Ishmael" is a great first line. But it is a great first line for Moby Dick. Moby Dick is an adventure. You go along with Ishmael as he tries to get Ahab to stop killing everybody in his hunt for the white whale. And so it's very intimate. You are with Ishmael the whole time. And thus, when he says, "Call me Ishmael," he is saying, come with me, come join me. Now, if your book is a drama, or it's a comedy, or it's a romance, you probably don't want to start with "Call me," insert whatever the name of your character is, because it doesn't fit the tone of the book. So when you're going to write first sentences, don't just say, oh, this book has an awesome first sentence, I'm going to copy it. Instead, think of what the tone of your book is and write a first sentence that lets the reader know this is the tone of my book. If your book is a grand, intimate adventure, high seas and all that, sure, "Call me Ishmael" and your variation of it, that might work. But it doesn't work for all books, no matter how brilliant a first line it is. Another thing that "Call me Ishmael" does is it's a very short first sentence. It says high action, but it also says that this book is going to have dialogue that is short and pithy because it's going to follow the way the first sentence is. I'm not saying that all of Moby Dick is short. He wrote some chapters about whales that were quite long and detailed, but a lot of his dialogue is very short because the sailors didn't have time for long monologues when they're almost being killed on the high seas. However, if your book does have a lot of longer sentences in it, you can prepare the reader for that by having your first sentence be longer. There is some talk about whether sentences should be short or whether sentences should be long, and I say sentences should be whatever works for your story. My favorite first sentence of all time is not from Moby Dick, although I think that "Call me Ishmael" is a great first line. My favorite first line of all times is from The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie R. King. I'm going to read it to you right now. "I was 15 when I first met Sherlock Holmes, 15 years old with my nose in a book as I walked the Sussex Downs and nearly stepped on him." That's an amazing first sentence. It has character, it has setting, It has conflict. You know that Sherlock Holmes is in the book, so you want to keep reading anyway. It is not, however, a short sentence. It is 29 perfect words. If she had started The Beekeeper's Apprentice, Call Me Mary, that would not have worked. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? The perfect sentence is the one that works for your book. And that should not stress you out, because hopefully you've already written the book. And so you know what your theme, and you know what your conflict, and you know your characters, and you know whether you've written a drama with long descriptive sentences or whether you've written an adventure with more short, choppy sentences. And so you get an idea of how the book should start. The first sentence is to set, well, what type of book it is. It's to tell the reader, here is what you can expect. Since I know you did finish your book, if you really can't figure out how to start your book, I would suggest going to the end and looking at the last scene. And is there a way that you can make the first scene and the last scene mirrors of each other? Bookend the middle with these two sections, the beginning and the end. And I will tell you, if you do that, readers will think you are very clever, that on the first sentence, the first paragraph, you were able to hint at what the last sentence and the last paragraph was going to be about. And it's a very neat, clever way. And it also helps you figure out what your first sentence is going to be, because you just have to look at your last sentence. If you absolutely cannot figure out what your first sentence should be, maybe your book is starting in the wrong spot. So I would suggest moving forward and seeing if the book needs to start at a later date. Or did you start the action too soon and you've had no explanation? In that case, maybe back it up a little bit. Start with a normal day before you dump, havoc on everybody. Imagine Harry Potter. I'm going to read the first line of Harry Potter, although I'm sure most of you can recite it with me. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. Now, does that story talk about the boy wizard or Voldemort or magic or anything? It does not. What it does is contrast. It says, welcome to a perfectly normal world, and now we're going to toss it on its ear. So it also gives you a little hint that things may not be as perfect as they seem, because this is a sentence that's like, gosh darn it, we're normal. Thank you very much. We are normal. And it feels like they're forcing the issue a little bit, because maybe they're not as normal as they like to be. This is a lot coming out of a first sentence. But if they had started the book with all of the wizards celebrating because Voldemort was dead, well, it would be just like any other wizard book that you've been reading. By backing it up a little bit, by giving you the point of view of what we now know are muggles, even though they are very special muggles because they are related to Harry and Harry's mother, and they're tied into all of this. But by backing it up, it ended up being the perfect starting point, because you set the normal before you introduce everything that's unusual. So take a look at your book. Are you starting in the right spot? Try moving forward, try moving backwards, and when you do so, that perfect first sentence might pop right out at you. Okay, so the whole point is about writing the perfect first sentence. And even though I have told you not to stress about it, you probably are. So now I'm going to tell you to really not stress about it, because it doesn't matter if your first sentence is perfect, if you spent days working on the first sentence. If all the sentences after it are mediocre at best and bad grammar and boring at worst, nobody's going to care about your first sentence, because they're going to stop reading after the 5th, 6th, 7th, 12th sentence. So you kind of have to have a good book, not just a good first sentence. So make sure that you do take your focus away from the first sentence and concentrate on editing the book, the whole book, every sentence in the book, as much as you can. And most importantly, the first sentence is the beginning of your book, which means you get to choose what your first sentence is. Make it fun. Don't stress about it. And most importantly, don't worry about other people going, oh, I don't know if that's the best first sentence there ever was. Not everybody can write Call Me Ishmael. And here's a good secret. When Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick, nobody was telling him that Call Me Ishmael was the best first line ever. the book didn't do that well in the beginning. It's only people in the future that look at the book now and say, wow, that "call me Ishmael, that is a great first line." So don't worry about your first line as much as the perfect first line might imply you should. Instead, make your book the best you can, and your first line will be good as it can be too. All right. Join me on Tuesday. We'll do another 10-minute write-in, and you can focus on getting these sentences as good as they can be. Unless it's your first draft, in which case, don't worry about it. Just finish the book. I appreciate you joining me on Sundays as we talk about the craft of writing. If you want to get more videos, you can hit the subscribe button down below. A like is always appreciated, and I'd love it if you would share my channel with your friends. Today's quote is by George Orwell. I don't have to tell you who he is. And this is what he said. Writing a book is a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a long bout of some painful illness. One would never undertake such a thing if one were not driven on by some demon whom one can neither resist nor understand. I think some people think about writing the first sentence that way. I hope you find it more fun than stressful. So long from Jenn's writing world. Until we meet again, write, write, write.